I'm the first one to tell you, I don't think Oregon is the fourth best team in the country. I'm not certain that they're the fifth best team in the country. But I'm also not certain that there's any elite teams outside of Ohio State. But what I am certain is that Washington and USC, while I'm sure both capable on the right given day, certainly could beat Oregon. Because again, I don't think Oregon is just this, I don't think this is the best team Oregon's ever had. I think this team is not as good a team they had last year.
I would agree with that.
But the idea that you thought that Washington or USC, when I looked at both of those games, I thought it was going to have to be they were going to have to play their best game of the year, and Oregon was going to have to kind of muddle their way through it. And you can make the argument that Oregon did kind of muddle their way through kind of parts of both of those games, but neither side was, Washington and USC weren't good enough. I mean, the first interception that Damon Williams had down at the goal line, it's a terrible ball. I mean, you can't throw a fade route to the front pylon with a safety coming over the top. It was a great play by Candy, but at the same time, like, what are you doing? And he shorted the ball. I mean, that's just a terrible play on
Kennedy just read his eyes, basically, right?
Yeah, it was you can't throw that. When you go back, I went back and looked at that. I'm like, you can't throw it. And that's why Damon Williams, I think, is maddening for Washington fans. So that game went about the same way I thought the USC game was going to go. Little resistance, but at the end of the day, you were 2 scores better. So now we look ahead for Oregon. And like someone asked me too, like, what did you think, like with Oregon, their O-line healthy, they didn't run the ball particularly well. Wasn't great. Again, I don't look at anything that Oregon does as overly exceptional. I just think Oregon is a really good team without a lot of glaring weaknesses. But I think when you look to me at the good teams that Oregon has played, right? Because I don't give credit for beating the hell out of Northwestern or Oregon State or anything. So if we're going to say that there's 4 teams that Oregon has played, Penn State, Indiana, I guess we could say 5 if you want to say Iowa, USC, Washington.
Yeah.
Like those are the teams that at least, and you can dismiss Penn State, but when they played Penn State still had a lot to play for. As a tough environment, right? So when I look at those teams that they've played, those have been competitive dogfights. You need a double overtime to pull it out against Penn State. Indiana was just better than you were, right? Iowa, you needed Dante Moore to have just an all-time drive. That throw that he had, I believe also to Malik Benson, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the best throws that you'll see, which is why I also think he's going to be a top 5 player when he decides to come out. USC, you got some resistance, but I never felt that they were in the game. And then against Washington in the fourth quarter, that was a 3-point game. And then again, you had a absolute strike by Dante Moore, put it out of reach, and Washington never threatened again. So you've had 5 games, and I guess you could say that it was dominant in USC. The rest of them have been dogfights. And I think that is who Oregon is. Oregon is a really good team that is not going to beat themselves. But when I look ahead to the playoff, and you say, someone asked me, like, what do you think about their inability to run, or do you this or that? Styles make fights. And depending on who they play in the college football playoff, different deficiencies or different strengths are going to play a big role in what Oregon does, right? My question with Oregon is, assuming they're not a top 4 seed, and by the way, there's still a world where they could be a top 4 seed. I don't necessarily buy it, but if you wanted to look ahead, let's say Bama just gets absolutely housed in the SEC title game, right? Georgia gets revenge and just beats the break off of them. Texas Tech loses to BYU in the Big 12 title game. I think there's a chance at that point that Oregon becomes the 4 seed. I do.
Yeah.
I don't think that those are likely to happen. Certainly, I don't think Texas Tech is losing to BYU, but there is a scenario. But for the most part, I think Oregon is safely the 5 or the 6.
Can I throw out another wacky scenario at you, too?
Yeah.
What if the same thing that Florida State getting ousted out of the college football playoff when it was a 4-team game only because of an injury a couple of years ago, say Julian Sayin goes, I don't want this to happen, but if he goes down, will the College Football Playoff Committee not want to include a team just because of an injured player and vaulting Oregon up?
There's a difference between falling from 1 to 4. Like people have brought up the Ole Miss thing.
Yeah.
Could Ole Miss get slotted down a notch or two? Certainly. Is Ole Miss going to go from 6 to out? No. Remember, Florida State went from 4 to 5.
Yeah.
They fell one spot. There's no scenario. Oregon is safe at 5 or 6. Is there an outside chance that at 5 or 6? Is there an outside chance that Oregon is the 4 seed? Sure. And that gets you the bye. But realistically, Oregon will be the 5 or the 6. And so when I look at that, the first game is probably going to be against Tulane or North Texas. Maybe a James Madison, right? That's a realistic sort of scenario. So I think by the fact that you've moved up to the 5 or 6, you've really put yourself in the catbird seat. Because a couple weeks ago, that first round game was against Alabama or Notre Dame. And certainly playing one of those teams is different than playing, let's be more realistic, it's probably going to be Tulane or Virginia, right? That'll be your first round opponent. So if we're going to assume that Oregon rolls in that one, which I think is a fair assumption, I don't think those schools should be able to test you. It does make it a little easier because you don't have to beat 4 elite teams. You have to beat 3 elite teams. So in some shape or form, like as it stands now, like you would probably play Tulane and then Texas Tech and then Ohio State and then maybe Georgia. That is a conceivable path. Now, we don't know what the whole bracket will look like, but we do have an idea that in that first round, you're playing Virginia or Tulane or North Texas. You're playing the 11 or the 12.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that bracket, in some shape or form, right? Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Mississippi, someone like that. But like I said, as it was going into championship week, right now it would be that. If chalk held out, Oregon, and then you're waiting for Texas Tech, and then probably Ohio State, and then on the national title game, the other side of the bracket, Indiana, Georgia, Bama, someone like that. Is Oregon good enough when you look at the 4 or 5 games that they have played against teams that are of an upper quality? And I can make the argument that every team outside of Tulane or Virginia, whoever they play in the first round, is going to be better than everyone not named Indiana. And from a talent standpoint, they're going to be better than Indiana. Does Oregon, who has just found this gritty way to win games, right? They just find a way. Can you do that 3 or 4 weeks in a row? Can you beat the defense of Texas Tech? Then can you battle Ohio State? And if you get through that, then your reward is Georgia. Can Oregon do that? Is it conceivable? Sure. Because I don't think there's a ton of elite teams. What I have seen from Oregon this year, would I say it's likely? No. I don't think that this team, to me, has the feel that last year's did. I thought last year's team looked and felt like a national championship team. And it wasn't. We know what happened when they played Ohio State. When I watch this team, do I see a national championship team? I don't. Even if the receivers come back, do I feel that this is a national title team? No, I don't. If the right bracket goes their way, if they get on a heater, if Dante Moore plays out of his mind, is it possible? Absolutely. Because like I said, outside of Ohio State, I don't think there's an elite team in college football. I really don't.
I can't come at you even as very biased Duck fan. I disagree with you, buddy. This is a beginning of the season. I did not think Oregon was going to be near the top of these upper echelon teams. I'm frankly surprised that they are able to get to this point in 11-1 college football playoff. Like, this was supposed to be a developmental year.
Yeah.
They've still had freshmen scoring touchdowns out the booty. Yep. And thankfully putting some stuff out on the offensive side of the field, but they won't be able to do that, at least in my opinion, unless something just lightning strikes for them. They're just not gonna be able to do it against an Ohio State, maybe in Indiana, maybe playing Indiana. See, that's the one scenario, Suke, I could see it going well for Oregon. Could they pull an Ohio State, learn like they did last year when Oregon beat them, and then just run everybody else over in the college football playoff?
I suppose. But at no point, Ohio State had it all.
Yeah.
And it was a matter, can you put it all together? I don't think Oregon does.
Yeah.
Again, I think Oregon's good. I don't think they're great. I thought last year's Oregon team was better than this. And I think next year's team is going to be better. I think the next 2 years of Oregon, that to me is like, oh my God, look out. If everyone comes back next year, look at how many, all you have to do is replace, some linemen. But when you look at the young secondary, you look at the young receivers, you look at the young quarterback, you look at the young backs, yes, you're going to lose some guys, but Oregon has been so good in the portal, and they recruit so well, and the depth of this team next year and the year after is the teams where I look at and I'm like, oh boy, But this doesn't feel like Ohio State to me. This doesn't feel like a sleeping juggernaut. This feels like an overachieving team. This feels like a team that could have lost 2 or 3 games, but because they're well coached, they're deep, the next man up mentality, and it's just a gritty, hard-ass team that follows after their coach, they found ways to win games. And that, to me, against the better competition teams, I just don't think you're going to do that 4 weeks in a row, which is what you're going to have to do. And I'm not certain that their best is quite good enough. But the beauty part about now versus a couple years ago, again, if we're going to crap on college football, you get a chance to prove it. Because in the olden days, think about that, even in the 4-team playoff, you're not making it. You would not get a chance to do it. Oregon gets a chance to prove idiots like me that says, I don't think this is a national title team. You get a chance to give everyone the middle finger and go out and do it. And that's why with all the crap that we can talk about college football, and we'll actually take a look at what the playoff will look like, who's in, who's out, because really you're playing for 1, maybe 2 spots. That's it. The rest of this is locked in. This is a better system than we've ever had. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what we had? Absolutely.